going on, guys and girls? I'm going to call this Chronicles of a Junkyard 350. Basically, I have a 1988 Monte Carlo SS, and at the end of the year last year, well, end of the summer because I live in New York, the engine blew up. It broke the top of the valve off, dropped the valve into the cylinder, and destroyed pretty much everything. Had blocked the whole deal. Luckily, I had a friend who had a 350 sitting in the corner of his garage that he wasn't going to use. It's a 2-volt main. He didn't want it because he planned on putting a lot of power in his car, so he gave it to me for free. I know, that's awesome, right? I brought it home, I broke it down. It wound up having the terrible 624 cast iron heads on it. So, I scrapped them, and then I went to the pick and pull, which for those of you that don't know is a junkyard, where the price of a part is the price of the part, no matter which vehicle it came off of. Mercedes or Geo Metro, the price is the same for that part. That being said, I went to the yard, I went to the Chevy section, I walked around, found multiple Vortec 350 engines in quite a few trucks. So I picked what I thought was the best. It was a 98 Chevy 1500 with only 100,000 miles on it. I pulled the heads off, brought them home, washed them, cleaned up the bottom end of the engine, and as you can see I painted it gold because the interior on the car is tan. It used to be a black and gold Monty. But anyways, so we've got the motor here now, it's cleaned up, I got the heads on, they're all torqued down. I'm getting ready to put the lifters back in, and I wanted to mark on a point here. If you've ever read an engine manual or rebuilt an engine, they always say make sure you match up your lifters with the boards that they came out of. Unfortunately, when I flipped this motor over to take the oil pan out, I had already taken the top end apart and I didn't think about it. So when I flipped it over, all the lifters fell out. Now I have no idea where they went. So we're going to wing it and we're going to put them back in. Another note is I bought a cam for this motor. This motor has a brand new cam in it from Speed Pro. It's a very mild cam, so hopefully it won't be a big deal. But I still don't know, so we're going to test that theory. We're going to put the lifters back in wherever I want, since I don't know where they went. And we're going to put this engine back together and see what it does. Basically, so far in this engine, I have about $150. Yeah, 150 bucks. The cam was 50, the heads were 80-something dollars. So between that and then buying gaskets and paint and whatnot, we're around 150 bucks so far. I'm not going to be nice to this engine when it's in the car. We're going to give it a nice easy break-in period because of the new cam. But then we're going to take this car to the autocross and beat the crap out of it. So, this is step one. Let's see what happens. So I just want to make a quick note. We're talking about Junkyard 350. I said I went to the yard and picked up Vortec heads. I just wanted to make a note here that while a Vortec head will bolt onto an old school Generation 1 block, the intakes are different. You have to have a specific intake for Vortec heads. I had this intake because the Monte Carlo already had Vortec heads on it. It is a Vortec to carb intake from Holly. Hopefully you can find one online if you wanted to go with Vortec heads. But you'll have to get one if you want to use Vortec heads. Otherwise, you're going to have to go with an older school head and use your older school intake, which is totally possible and that will work in a junkyard engine. But in this case, I went and got Vortec heads because they're really good heads. And I had a Vortec intake, so it was kind of a no-brainer. Didn't cost me anything extra. But if you're nervous about building a 350 or any engine for that matter, I suggest you do what I did, and you go pick up a book. I've had this book for quite a while now. I've built multiple engines using this book to do it. It is a How to Rebuild a Small Block Chevy Guide from SA Design. It's actually a pretty old book, but theories are still the same. So get a book if you want to do something like this. I suppose there's probably videos you can watch on the internet on how to rebuild a 350, but I find it's easier to have written paper in front of me, so I don't have to keep unlocking my phone or swiping up and down on the internet with my dirty fingers, trying to find it. It's right here in the book. You flip a page, it's right there. Go to the index, whatever you gotta do, but this is the easiest way to do it. Help you walk you through it, take some of the nerves away of doing it. We all make mistakes, so it's not that big of a deal if you do make a mistake. It just costs a little bit of money. Alright, this is an update on the the Junkyard 350 that we built for the Monte Carlo. As you can see, here's the Monte Carlo. She's a pretty girl, I know. So, we put the motor in the car. I had it running. It was running pretty good, but as soon as it got warm, we started getting a lot of smoke and steam out of the back exhaust. I was trying to do it as budget as possible, and I didn't take the heads and get them checked beforehand. I'm not sure where the water's getting in, whether it's getting in the intake or if it's getting in from the heads. They don't appear to be cracked. I'm thinking it might just be maybe a slight warp issue with the heads and the head gasket not torquing down flat. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to take the heads to the machine shop and have them checked, which is gonna be $180 on top of what I already spent. We're still, pretty good on the budget, but unfortunately, I'm gonna have to take them and get them checked. They're already off, obviously, as you can see here, and they're in the truck and ready to go to the shop tomorrow. But while we're here, we'll note on something. As you can see, number one cylinder is all the way up to top, dead center. When you're dropping an engine in a car like this, I find it's a lot easier to put it at top dead center when it's on the engine stand and then drop it in, so that then you can, pretty easily drop your distributor in and point the rotor towards number one. And in that case, it should fire up fairly easily without too much fight, too much work, which was the case with this. It dropped in, and I got everything hooked up, and on the first try, it fired right up. And it sounded good, and it sat here and idled good, and everything seemed to be okay until it got warm a little bit, and then we had a lot of antifreeze and stuff burning out of the exhaust, unfortunately. But the thing ran good, and it sounded great, so hopefully the heads will check out all right, and I won't have to go back to the yard and get another set and spend more money checking those ones, but I will let you know when that happens. Alright, so here's a little update on the Junkyard 350. I took the heads, I got them checked, and the heads are fine. As you can see by the look on my face, that's not a good thing. So I came home, I put them on the engine, I pressurized the coolant system, and it showed us nothing. It held pressure fine. Compression tested the cylinders. They had fantastic compression. They actually had between 165 and 170, which is like better than good. You would think somewhere there it would show me where the water's coming from. That is not the case. I finished putting the engine back together and I started it up. And again, just like the first time, it fired right up and ran great for about 1 minute. And then I started steaming out the exhaust. So the only thing I can figure is there has to be a crack in the cylinder wall somewhere. There's gotta be. With the engine having no history whatsoever, we have no idea where it came from, truly where it came from. We have word of mouth of where it came from. It's hard to say. And these are the chances you take when you're trying to build a junkyard motor. You don't really know. You don't know what you're getting. So unfortunately in my case, I'm not having any luck. So there is another engine that I have access to. I have to go take it out of a truck. And we're going to try this again. I'm going to take the cam out of this engine that I just put together, and the heads and intake off this engine. I'll put it on the other one, and we'll see what happens. So I got to be honest, I seriously thought about not posting this video because, well, I failed horribly. But I posted it anyway, so you guys could hopefully learn from my mistakes, or maybe you won't learn anything because I don't seem to have learned anything. But the end of the story is this. I talked to a couple of guys before I went and pulled the engine out. And one guy seemed to think that it was possible that because I blew up the engine before, that I filled the exhaust system full of water, and maybe that's where all my steam was coming from. And I guess that could still be possible because this is what happened. This morning I decided to try to run it for a while and maybe dissipate this water in the exhaust. That didn't work out. I started the engine, I kept an eye on the oil to make sure it wasn't getting water in it, kept an eye on the temp. I had the radiator cap off, watching the fluid in there to make sure that it wasn't disappearing. And it wasn't. And the thing was sitting here and it was running. And it was steaming out the back, and it actually almost seemed like maybe it was starting to dissipate. And then came another problem. All of a sudden, the engine developed a knock. Apparently, I haven't found any luck yet. Whether the knock's the top end or bottom end, it's hard to say. But it's making noise. Pulled the valve covers off, and there's hardly any oil in the top end. Now, I primed this engine before I put it in, if you remember correctly. And the pump was working. Now, come to find out, my oil pressure gauge failed at some point. I thought it was reading high, but it was actually stuck there and failed. which sucks. I'm really losing on this one here, but you guys deserve to see it. That's the whole point of making the video. So it failed. It failed miserably. This experiment was a total failure, and I'm frustrated. It sucks. It was a lot of time, and after taking the heads and getting them checked and everything, I'm somewhere in the $300 range. That's just right down the drain, pretty much. Not completely. The heads we know are good because they passed the check. So I mean, the heads are still usable, and I'll use them on another engine, but there's a chance I swiped the cam out of it. The brand new cam that I just put in, that might be what's making the noise. It's pretty bad. But like I said before, I have access to a couple engines. Well, I have access to the engine in the truck, and I found out today that my father-in-law will let me take an engine that he's got laying up at his house. But again, the engine at his house we know nothing about. It came with a bunch of stuff that we bought. Supposedly it's good. The engine in the truck is actually my father's truck that he's doing an LS swap on. That's a 350, but the compression test last night didn't go so well. It only about 80 pounds on the number 3 cylinder, and a couple of cylinders we couldn't get to because of the headers, but that could be in the valve train. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the bottom end. So there's 2 engines there. I will probably grab the one from my father-in-law's house because it's already out sitting on the floor, and it's just an easy grab and take. Whether that'll work or not, I have no idea, but at this point, I have really nothing to lose except for time. Unfortunately, I won't be able to touch this car for a couple weeks probably because I need to put a crate engine in my cousin's pickup truck. So it might be a couple weeks before I get back to it, but I will, of course, when that happens, let you guys know what's going on. Getting the engine in and stuff. That engine, I'm not even going to bother putting these heads on. I'm just going to put it in and see what happens just because of time. If it goes in and it runs good and doesn't have any issues, I'll probably just leave it that way for a while. And maybe later in the season, if I'm feeling spunky, we'll try to put the Vortec head and a cam or something in it and spice it up a little, but let's get it in first and see what happens. When that happens, I will post and I will let you guys and girls know what is going on in Whiteside's garage. Until then, keep it creative and happy building.